We've got some buffs, we've got some, actually there are no nerfs. We just have buffs because there's a rebalance patch. We're looking at Pyxniel, Zavia, Belanor, and two epic champions being Alika as well as Crypt Witch. Now, you're gonna notice this, I noticed this as well. These champions have been in the kind of buff rotation for quite some time now. I'm pretty sure everyone, maybe not Crypt Witch, but everyone else has been touched in some way by Plarium in the buff department. I mean, listen, A for effort. At least they're putting their good foot forward and trying to make things happen. Let's see what they did to these champions. So before we start this off, what I want to know is, give me a list of champions that you guys would want to rework. Because I definitely want to do a video talking about everyone that needs some type of rebalance here, who's strong, who's weak, and it's going to make that video a lot better if I get the feedback from the players, right? So give me a list of the champions you guys think that are way too weak in this game, who needs some type of buff. I don't want to hear about nerfs. I know there are tons of OP champions. We don't like the word nerf here. So just tell me about who you think should be buffed. Now let's continue with the current rebalance we're looking at here today. Pyxniel receiving her 1000th buff after being such a kind of featured fusion for the winter time. They're usually good. They were good in the past. We had Sir Nicholas, Tormund, and then Pyxniel. She's been buffed, like I said, a billion times. So is this going to be the one to push her over the edge here? Let's take a look and start off with this champion and see what they did. Is she going to be relevant since quite a few players, I mean, I'm sure players skipped her because of how terrible it was, but there is always that condition. Don't skip the champion just yet because they might get buffed. Pyxniel's sake, she got buffed. Like I said, I can't stop saying 1,000 times, but literally she was so bad. So as far as the A1 goes, it's going to place a perfect veil buff for one turn instead of having a 30% chance. Huge. It is an A1, so if you use this with counterattack, could be pretty decent, but overall, I don't think this is anything like to write home about. What I'm more curious about that they didn't touch on is what are they going to do with the books, since they are making it places a perfect veil buff instead of having a chance to do that. Now we have 3 books here. Should they get rid of them? Probably. Pyxniel takes way too many books as it is here, so getting rid of 3 books would be kind of huge for people who have her unbooked and who do want to use her after these changes go live. Next thing we have is going to be Icicle Barrage. What are they changing? Damage increased. Because I guess there are some people using Pyxniel as a nuker. Not a bad idea. Attacks all enemies, has an 80% chance of placing a freeze debuff for one turn, as opposed to 5 times at random, each hit having a 30% chance of placing a freeze. So as we can see here, these books are definitely not changing. Because this is going to be fully booked to 100% chance, is it nice that it's an AoE? Yes, way better. This is something that people kind of asked about me specifically. Since we first read the kit, 5 times at random, why? For what reason? I understand the synergy between hitting a champion twice, giving it a 100% chance, but what if you're fighting 5 enemies and you hit all of them once? What if you're fighting 5 enemies and you hit the same one 5 times? Then it's a single target freeze on an A3 ability, on a fusion. Nobody's got time for that. So now it's an AoE freeze. Once it's fully booked, 100% chance to freeze it one time. Better. Not amazing, but better. The damage was also increased. Next thing that's interesting is going to be the passive Frost Weaver. This is getting changed to a passive effect as well as an active effect. So first, going over the passive effect, immune to freeze debuffs, period. She's going to be immune to freeze debuffs. And then the second part is going to be filling this champion's turn meter for 25% for every ally that receives a freeze debuff. So there's no more chance to it, it's 100% chance of freezing, and she's just straight up immune. Next, we have the active effect that we don't currently see in the game here, which is at the end of each enemy or ally turn, removes freeze debuffs from all allies. This is going to change the books for this champion. It's still going to be at 3, but this is going to reduce the cooldown for every single book, which means it's going to start off at 5 and it's going to go all the way down to a 2-turn cooldown once this champion's fully booked here. So now the question is this enough to make this champion viable? Definitely better, but I mean, listen, maybe we're going to get some content that is more freeze heavy. It's possible, right? I can't say no. I can't say it's going to be completely useless because I just don't know. Is there going to be content down the line that's just going to freeze you nonstop? Yes, we have a little bit of that in the Doom Tower, but honestly, it's just not enough to say Pyxniel's fantastic. So, are we going to get a new dungeon that's going to freeze champions? If so, Pyxniel's going to be really good. Like, really, really good. The fact that she is getting rid of the freeze debuff, she can't be freezed, she's applying freeze on top of that, so she could be good theoretically, but no one's going to invest in a champion on a theoretical basis. No one should, at least. So the last change that's going to happen for Pyxniel is she's going to increase ally resistance by 60 in all battles, as opposed to 80 in arena battles. So overall, I think this is the first kind of relevant buff to this champion. Yes, there were some good ones in the past, but if you added them all up together, including this current one, this is how the champion should have been released. Then they should determine whether or not this champion's good or not, right? I think this is going to be definitely an average champion after this change, and this is how the champion should have been originally released. But listen, learning process for Plarium. Hopefully they learn from this. We are coming up on our own kind of Christmas time fusion, so based on these buffs, surely they understand how strong they have to make champions, so they're not buffing it a billion times like we see here. The next champions we're going to talk about is going to be the BelanorZavia combo. First thing, let's talk about Belanor's A2 ability, Insurmountable. So what this is going to do is it's going to place a defense down and weaken for 2 turns, and the debuffs cannot be resisted when Zavia is on the same team. So that's pretty strong, right? This means you don't have to build accuracy on this champion at all. Just a defense down, weakened champion. It's going to be an AoE, so attacks all enemies, which is kind of huge. I mean, right? If you really wanted a place to use this champion, you were struggling because this is a single target, right? 2 turns on a target enemy, then attacks them, then places perfect veil. Whatever. The fact that this is being changed to attacks all enemies, placing a defense down and weaken, is huge. This is a massive buff for Belanor. Why it was ever a single target to begin with, let's not go there, but the fact that it's AoE now, huge. So what does this mean? This means we are getting the first champion in the history of Raid that applies defense down and weaken that cannot be resisted. We have Ghostborn, huge. We have a few weakened champions that can't be resisted, huge. Conditioned, of course. Now we have this second condition here, Belanor and Zavia together, AoE defense down and weaken, and it cannot be resisted. Cannot stress how good that is in a game like this where efficiency it matters so much. And of course, placing the perfect veil on this champion for 2 turns is staying as well. Now the next change, as if that wasn't good enough, is going to be the partner bonus, right? So Tactical Partner. What it currently does activates this champion's Sword Leader skill, which is the A1, and also activates Poison Rain when Zavia is on the same team. So now what are we getting instead? It's going to now proc Overkill, much harder hitting ability, instead of this A1. So you can say, well, wouldn't it be nice to have increased crit rate more consistent? Use the A2, use the A3, go back to the A1, put the crit rate buff on, then we scale this again, 1, 2, in the meantime we've dropped the crit rate buff. The answer is yes. It would be nice to keep the crit rate buff on this, so maybe some people will look at this as not the best change. However, Overkill does a significant amount of damage, so I don't think that's too much of a big deal there. So as far as the changes to Belanor in this BelanorZavia combo, kind of insane. This is a massive change. Belanor is going to be a crazy strong champion, simply for the fact that he is an AoE defense down and weaken, but on top of that, it cannot be resisted if you do have the partner bonus with Zavia, making it a decent buff to having Zavia as well. So overall, this is a really good change. These are the type of changes we need to see as far as buffs go. Next champion we have is going to be Alika. We have a change to her A3 ability, Disorient. Why do I feel like every time a rebalance patch comes up, Alika or her sister for the partner bonus is somewhere in here? What are they trying to accomplish with these champions? Let me know in the comments. I just don't get it. So what they're doing with this is Disorient is going to be attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of increasing the cooldown of all enemy skills by 2 turns. That was the change. Massive, right? Instead of 1 turn, it's now 2 turns. So if you're using this champion, I mean, I did use her in Faction War. She's very strong. She's just going to get that much better as far as assisting you on the wave clear, right? So that's the good part about this. Is it a crazy change? I mean, I guess you can consider an additional turn being pretty big. Helps you out for survivability, so that's going to be the basic rundown on Alika and her changes. The next one we have is going to be Crypt Witch. So the ability we're talking about here is going to be Dismantled. What it's changing to is attacks 3 times at random. Why are you keeping at random? You just fixed it for Pyxniel. Anyways, each hit having a 75% chance of placing a defense down debuff for 2 turns. Each hit will also ignore 15% of the target's defense. Is this good? Not really. You're giving it 1 additional time, you're ignoring some defense, but nobody likes attack at random skills. Nobody. I'm telling you right now. There's not one person that's like, I cannot wait to get the next attack X amount of times at random champion. I just can't wait. Maybe if the animation was really, really cool looking, but still it would be a hindrance to have that specific skill set on a champion. You always want certainty in this game, especially when efficiency comes down to losing energy, right? You just don't want it. So is it a good change? Yeah, I mean, it's better than nothing, right? But for what? The next thing being changed is going to be not so fast, the A3 here. What it's going to do is attack 1 enemy will ignore 50% of the target's defense if this champion has a higher speed than the target. Okay, if this champion has a higher speed than the target. So now you have to build the champion faster instead of the target being faster. I guess that's okay, because when you're doing content like PvE content, campaign, all of that, the base speeds of the champions are literally the base speed, so she was unusable as far as this in many places in this game. Now she's going to do more damage if you're using her. It's a single target hit, so I guess you can consider this a single target nuker in the arena. However, if you're using her in the arena right now, this is a nerf, because now instead of you building a slow nuking champion, this champion's speed has to be higher. So this seems like a complete oversight by the company as far as why they would do this. I understand the point of her not being viable in like campaign, any dungeon you can think of, because it's using the base speed of champions, and if their base speed isn't below 98, you can never proc the ignore defense. I get it for sure. Maybe it would have been a better idea to just rework the skill. Ignores 50% of the target's defense, period. Right? Why add all of this extra like fluff just to make the champion seem eccentric in some crazy way by adding this speed condition to it? I don't know. But it is what it is. This is the change. It's the only change to this champion. I guess this is a buff, but in my opinion, it's kind of a nerf. Because like I said, if you're using this champion in the arena, which is where else would you use her, right? Why would you need this single target nuke anything in PvE content when she has 3 times at random after the change hit and another single target hit? I mean, I guess, I don't know. If you use this champion, let me know. I'd be curious to see where you guys are currently using this. If you've struggled with this being unplayable, I'm not sure where they got the feedback to change a champion like this when there are a million champions that you and I can both think of that need reworks. Speaking of that, now that we've kind of finished all the champions being changed here, and as I mentioned in the start, leave me a comment and let me know who you guys want for some type of rebalance, since I probably should make a video on the champions that need some type of buff because they're just unplayable, right? So it's going to make a video that much better if I can read from a comment list of what the players want. Because me, I have my own opinion. I'm just one person, right? Strength in numbers will always prevail. So it's important you leave a comment on the champions you guys think that should be buffed and what should be buffed about them. Of course, Plarium is going to take any champion they want to buff and they're going to come up with their own ideas. But let's not completely count out the fact that they could take feedback from any type of player in this game. So that's going to conclude this video. If you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I will see you all in the next upload.